Throughout time, scientists have managed to uncover about 6,000 early human fossils, ranging from skulls to teeth. For some of these fossils, it was a breeze. Researchers could instantly identify them as belonging to, say, the Neanderthals. However, when it came to others, things got a bit trickier. Some fossils just didn't fit into any existing categories. So, what categories of prehistoric humans do we actually know about? Well, up until recently, we recognized 8 different species of early humans. One of these is Homo habilis, which means handyman. You'll recall that Homo is Latin for human. They resembled regular primates, but were pivotal in our evolution. They were the first to create stone tools, which significantly aided their daily activities, such as butchering. Next up, we have Homo rudolfensis. These guys were larger than Homo habilis and boasted bigger brains, but they were still quite distant from modern humans. For example, even though the neurological structure of their brains was becoming more complex, they were probably not capable of using any form of actual spoken language. Then came Homo erectus, the first to walk upright, followed by Homo antecessor, which is considered the last common ancestor of modern humans and Neanderthals, along with a host of other Homo species. Meanwhile, we're still piecing together the story of the enigmatic Denisovans. Our knowledge of Homo naledi is pretty limited too, since it was only discovered in 2013, and it is species number 8. Interestingly, Naledi means star in the Sotho language because they were found in a cave called Rising Star. Scientists were taken aback by them. Everything suggested they were around 2 million years old. But after closer examination and some tests, it turns out that the Naledi species is much younger, between 236 and 335,000 years old. Their hands were adapted to making tools, yet no tools have been found nearby. Long story short, they're a puzzling species, and there's still so much more to learn about them. So even though today we have only one human species on our planet, Homo sapiens, we continue to discover ancient species that are long gone. Now you might wonder why researchers study these extinct species. The truth is, they need this knowledge to piece together the intricate narrative of our prehistoric past. In 2024, a significant discovery emerged, the 9th human species, named Homo giluensis, which translates to large-headed. Researchers suggest that this species hunted wild horses, crafted stone tools, and processed animal hides to survive harsh winters. A researcher from the University of Hawaii noted that the discovery of this potential new species came about while his team was developing a novel method for classifying fossil evidence. Interestingly, one potential representative of Homo giluensis isn't entirely new to science. The Denisovans, first identified in 2010 through DNA analysis of a finger bone found in Siberia, have yet to be classified as a distinct species. Some scientists propose that they may actually belong to this newly identified group. These big-headed individuals could help shed light on the long-standing mysteries surrounding these hominin fossils, which have puzzled researchers due to their mixed characteristics of Homo erectus and Homo sapiens. You see, sometimes it's tough to call a spade when you don't even know what a spade looks like. You get the idea? Many unsolved mysteries linger, simply because scientists haven't had this crucial, big-headed piece of the puzzle. So theoretically, we modern humans could also be considered a bit of Homo giluensis. You don't believe me? Well, watch this. We need to consider 2 key facts for this equation. First, there are the Denisovans, a group we might refer to as Homo giluensis from a scientific perspective. Yeah, this is just a theory proposed by some researchers, but let's roll with it for now and pretend it's a fact. Second, it's important to know that the Denisovans interbred with the ancestors of modern-day Melanesians. These folks inhabit areas ranging from New Guinea to the Fiji Islands and carry between 4 and 6% Denisovan DNA. Now, you might not personally have those genes, unless you've been tested, of course, but the key takeaway here is that there are modern humans today who share genetic links with the Denisovans, or Homo giluensis, or big heads if you prefer. Now, that all sounds pretty plausible, Let's unpack step by step how it happened. Researchers have uncovered this type of ancient human, known as the Denisovans, based on skeletal remains found in Siberia. These ancient humans coexisted and interbred with modern humans, adding yet another layer to our understanding of human evolution. Named after the Siberian caves where their fossils were discovered, the Denisovans are believed to have roamed widely across Eurasia. Evidence indicates that the Denisovans lived alongside Neanderthals and interacted with early Homo sapiens, possibly around 50,000 years ago. A team of scientists successfully sequenced a complete genome from these ancient hominins using nuclear DNA extracted from a finger bone. This discovery reveals that at least 4 distinct human groups existed during the time when anatomically modern humans began migrating out of Africa. Alongside modern humans and Neanderthals, we now have to consider the Denisovans and another small human species from Indonesia, often referred to as the Hobbit, when discussing our evolutionary history. One intriguing question that arises is why Denisovan genes are predominantly found in modern Melanesians, yet absent from other Eurasian populations. Remember that 4 to 6%? One hypothesis suggests that interactions between the Denisovans and early modern humans were limited and brief, especially as humans migrated throughout Southeast Asia into Melanesia. Scientists speculate that only a small number of the Denisovans may have interbred with a larger group of modern humans. This could explain how the Denisovan genes made their way into the gene pool despite the likelihood of infrequent encounters. Anyway, the more scientists dig into our past, the more fascinating things they uncover about our ancestors. Take Neanderthals, for example. Did you know these guys were responsible for creating the very first piece of art ever? I had no idea. But a 2018 study of ancient cave art in Spain revealed what are now considered the oldest known artistic creations. We used to think Neanderthals lacked the cognitive skills needed for art, but it turns out they were actual art pioneers. Not only did they create art, but they also seem to have invented hashtags thousands of years before Chris Messina did it in 2007. Right, I'm kidding, but you'll soon get why I mention hashtags. The artworks found in several caves in Spain include simple hand stencils, a ladder-like drawing, and various other markings. Until recently, these prehistoric pieces were believed to have been made by early humans. But new testing methods suggest they're much older than we thought. Above all, the earliest recognized Neanderthal artwork, which looks like a hashtag, was discovered in Gibraltar back in 2014. To determine the age of these artworks, scientists employed advanced dating techniques using eHarmony and Match.com. Oops, wait a minute, wrong dating techniques. They actually used uranium and thorium radioisotopes instead of the traditional carbon dating. Once the necessary tests were completed, they confirmed the art was approximately 65,000 years old, 15,000 years older than the previously oldest known art from Indonesia. At that time, the only species around were Neanderthals, so it's safe to say they were behind these creations. Modern humans didn't arrive in Spain until about 20,000 years later. Hey, it was a long commute. That rules them out as the hashtag creators. The hand stencil was likely created intentionally, with the artist preparing the pigment and applying it over their hand. Plus, the caves also contain a collection of painted seashells that are an astonishing 115,000 years old. Some of these shells have been drilled, suggesting they might have been used as jewelry. Some specialists argue that the fact Neanderthals created art hints that they might have also had some form of spoken language. So maybe it's time we fully embrace Neanderthals as part of our lineage. They're humans too, just a different branch of our family tree. While these findings are intriguing, some experts remain skeptical about the new dating methods, claiming they're not entirely convinced. Hey, what do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments.
Whoa, there could have been more human species throughout history than we used to think. In one place in East China, Hualongdong, Scientists found the remains of a human who lived around 300,000 years ago. They found a jawbone and parts of the skull. They carefully studied these bones to compare them with the bones of other ancient and modern humans. The remains themselves weren't that unusual. We know our human family is really diverse and has been around for millions of years. You know our ancient relative called Australopithecus, right? These fellas lived in different parts of Africa, and they were known for walking on two legs, just like modern humans. But their brains and some other parts of their bodies made them more similar to apes. Their teeth are a good example of how they were like a mix of apes and modern humans. Their canine teeth were smaller than those of apes, but their back teeth were still larger than ours. There were different types of them. You can recognize some Paranthropus because of their big jaws and teeth. One of the most famous fossils of Australopithecus is Lucy, a lady that's about 3.2 million years old. She was found in Ethiopia. So, we know that our family got pretty big from that point, or probably even before it. But it's always great to welcome some new members, which seemed to be the case with this new discovery. Some parts of these bones look similar to the bones of ancient humans, while other parts look more like the bones modern humans have. For example, the person whose bones they found didn't have a real chin. That means we can't put it in any of the groups we know of, like Neanderthals, or maybe even Homo sapiens. So, might we be missing a branch from the human family tree, or an important step in our evolution? What we're looking at here could be some mix between the creatures that became modern humans like us, and the ones that turned into what we today know as Denisovans. It takes time to figure it all out, though. We hadn't known much about Denisovans either, until we found some of their bones in a cave in the mountains. These bones are really rare, and we only had a few pieces to analyze, but their genes told us a lot more about their past than their fossils. Different kinds of humans lived on this planet, but through time, they spread around. One group started living in Africa. Those are our kind, Homo sapiens. Another group went to Europe. That's how we got Neanderthals. But some of these ancient human groups moved all the way to Asia. That's where we can trace a new interesting kind, Denisovans. It seems they're cousins to both modern humans and Neanderthals. The three species actually shared a common ancestor about 765,000 years ago. It's still not clear why Neanderthals and Denisovans took different paths, but one theory says that it was mostly because the Arctic ice sheet expanded southward all the way to the Black Sea, cutting off Europe from Asia. Life, or better yet, the planet, kept them separated for a very long time. Plus, they kept changing places where they lived all the time, always looking for something better, like every other human species before and after them. But this didn't last forever. Scientists found genes from two groups of Denisovans, one in mainland Asia and the other in a place called Melanesia. So not only did they have different groups within their populations, but it also seems that after thousands and thousands of years of developing independently, the members of these three populations, Neanderthal, Denisovans, and modern humans, somehow met again and spread all across the land. 5% of the Denisovan genome lives on, not in the area where scientists found their bones, but in people that live thousands of miles away in Southeast Asia, for instance, in Papua New Guinea. But scientists believe that the cave where they found the remains of Denisovans might be as far north as they had lived. It would have been way too cold for them to survive if they had gone further north. From there, they traveled as far south as Indonesia. This was possible because, during their time, sea levels were lower than today. So Indonesia was connected to mainland Asia. But they probably didn't make it to Australia since it was still separated by water. These three groups mixed together too. Scientists have found a bone of a girl who had a Neanderthal mom and a Denisovan dad. It's the only first-generation hybrid human we've discovered. She even got a cool nickname, Denny. One of the mysteries about Denisovans is how they disappeared. Maybe they mixed so much with other humans that they just blended in. Or it's possible that modern humans' ancestors were stronger, had better tools, or even brought some diseases that didn't affect them, but affect Denisovans. Climate and where they lived might have also played a role. Denisovans lived in a wide range of environments, from cold parts of Asia to tropical Indonesia. Climate changes and the challenges of different habitats might have been really difficult to survive. But it's hard to draw strict lines in our family tree. We're still relatively new at learning about it anyway. Who knows how many new members we are about to discover? Half a century ago, a team of scientists had an idea that a collection of fossils they found at the Great Rift Valley in Tanzania were actually the remains of some new human species. Yup, that was the time when we welcomed Homo habilis into the family. It was a big discovery at that time since people mostly believed that the story of our evolution had been really simple. First, there were Australopiths that looked like apes. After them, there was Homo erectus, the upright man. They most likely lived in Africa around 2 million years ago, but also expanded really quickly across Eurasia. It was the first human species that we know about to have traveled such long distances to find a better place for life. They looked and behaved like humans. Plus, they were probably the first of our ancient ancestors who learned how to deal with fire. Maybe they were the first to cook food as well, and that's what we're definitely thankful for. Cooking food was an innovation that made the human diet more nutritive, and we could grow bigger and smarter brains. So, yeah, Homo habilis made things more complicated. They could walk on 2 legs, but they could also be better at climbing trees than walking on the ground like us. Plus, their brains were smaller than what a human should probably have. At first, it seemed these fossils could be from a completely different side of the family, related to other creatures, Australopithecus africanus, that looked like apes. But more and more digging showed that even though its jaws and teeth were similar, Homo habilis was still bigger and a bit different. The name means handy man, because they were probably able to make and use simple tools. Searching for more fossils in Africa wasn't easy because a team of researchers had to deal with wild animals and tough conditions all the time. But eventually, they managed to find some teeth and a strange skull that was, again, something different from the ancestors we knew about. The teeth were really big, so this new fella got the nickname of Nutcracker Man. For a long time, everyone believed this kind had evolved to eat hard foods. But the fossil teeth didn't show much damage, so they might have been eating food that was softer than we thought. This finding might help us understand how our teeth have been evolving through time, too. And right there, in the same layers of soil where Nutcracker Man was lying, they found ancient stone tools. At first they thought those had belonged to Nutcracker, but as they kept digging, they found more fossils that didn't match Nutcracker Man. It means that someone else must be the real tool maker. But that's another story for another time.
At some point in its long and very interesting history, our dear planet Earth was sort of snoozing, just doing its planetary thing, spinning around the sun. And then, bam, life starts getting fancy. Plants and animals start strutting their stuff, showing off their complexity. Fast forward a bit. About 65 million years ago to be exact, and a cosmic disaster strikes, or at least that's what we presume. An asteroid probably smashed into Earth, wiping out the dinosaurs and other big animals. We can't pinpoint specifics about the asteroid, but we do know that it was extremely large and it crashed into our precious planet, creating a dusty mess that settled everywhere. You can still find remnants of that dust layer in sedimentary rocks today. If you dig beneath it, you'll uncover a whole bunch of fossils. These prehistoric creatures were living it up before the asteroid crashed the party. Think of it as the planet going on a cleaning spree, leaving a bunch of empty spaces waiting to be filled. And guess who took the opportunity? Mammals! These furry little critters were the ones to rise to fame. But why is it that this disaster became such a great opportunity for mammals? It's pretty simple, actually. With no big bullies around, they grew, multiplied, and had a population expanse. All kinds of mammals joined to fill in the blanks. Primates, rodents, basically, the whole furry gang. We're talking about placental mammals, marsupials, and even egg-laying mammals, adding some serious variety to the mix. We like to think of primates as our closest relatives here on Earth. What's their story? Well, around 63 million years ago, just a couple of million years after the dinosaurs' final dance, the primates decided it was time for a family reunion. They split into two groups, the dry-nosed primates, who became the cool monkeys and apes we know today, and the wet-nosed primates, who went off to become lemurs and aye-ayes, hey-hays. The fun didn't stop there. About 58 million years ago, the dry-nosed primates began their own little mission. One special guest called the tarsier, arrived on the scene, featuring big eyes that were perfect for late-night shenanigans. This tarsier took a different path from its primate relatives, embracing its unique niche and evolving separately. To this day, the tarsier is the only primate that feeds exclusively on meat. These little guys have a taste for insects, small birds, rodents, and even lizards. But that's not all that makes them unique. Their eyes are twice the size of their brains. Also, their heads can do a full 180-degree spin, just like an owl. Because of their features, the tarsiers are the true kings and queens of the night. With their superpower of ultrasonic tracking, they can spot their prey instantly. Plus, their legs and feet are like springs ready to launch them into action. They've got this special ankle bone called the tarsus, which gives them those epic leaping skills. Hence the name, if you were wondering. But let's leave these little critters to rest and get back to our story, shall we? About 55 million years ago, the Earth cranked up the heat, literally. This sudden hot pod was a bit too much for many deep ocean dwellers and plants to handle, and they bid their farewells. But hey, every goodbye is an opportunity for something new, right? The oceanic mammals known as cetaceans, saw their chance and took it. They splashed into those empty niches, becoming the rulers of the sea. In this category of creatures, you can find the blue whale and the dolphin. A special primate guest made an appearance around 47 million years ago. Scientists now affectionately call the fossil of such a creature Ida. This little wonder caused quite a stir, initially hailed as the missing link in human evolution. But here's the hilarious part. It turned out Ida was not one of us dry-nosed primates, but a cheeky wet-nosed one. Moving forward to 40 million years ago, this is when another big event happened in the primate world. The New World monkeys, our distant cousins, decided to take a different path and branch off from our lineage of Old World monkeys. They packed their bags and set off to conquer South America, where they're still living it up today. What's the difference between the two, you might ask? Well, one crucial thing that sets them apart is the fact that the Old World monkeys had nostrils that pointed downwards. Around 25 million years ago, another troop of apes entered the scene, and these guys had something special, the lack of a tail. These unique creatures would go on to become our closest relatives. We're talking apes and great apes, the cool gang who share a whole lot of genetic similarities with us. The first ape to break free from the monkey madness was the gibbon. About 18 million years ago is when this little acrobat swung into the picture. A few million years later, the great apes made their grand entrance too. Orangutans were the pioneers, venturing into the wilds of southern Asia. We're getting closer and closer to the present. It was 7 million years ago when the great apes took a major fork in the evolutionary road. One path led to our ancestors, the future Homo sapiens, and the other path led to chimpanzees and bonobos. These two primate branches remained united for a few million years before finally going their separate ways. 5.6 million years ago, a game-changing ape called Ardipithecus made its way into our evolutionary history. It had a special talent, bipedalism. That's right, this was one of the first apes to walk on 2 feet, probably making its primate buddies raise an eyebrow or two. The real showstoppers, however, arrived around 4 million years ago, the Australopithecus crew. These were the earliest members of the Hominina hominina subtribe, our tribe. What made them so special? Well, probably the fact that they brought some serious tools to the game. Stone tools, to be precise. It seems that at some point in their evolution, these clever primates started using stones to make their lives easier. Now here comes a crucial turning point in our story. About 2 million years ago, our ancestors faced a food shortage. Survival of the fittest was the name of the game, and two strategies emerged. Group 1 went for stronger jaws, allowing them to chomp on tough foods like nuts. Group 2 had a different idea. They opted for weaker jaws, but bigger brains. They wanted access to a wider range of food options. Obviously, the bigger-brained group took the prize. And here's where our gang comes into play. Around 2.5 million years ago, a type of primate also known as handyman made its mark on history. These clever beings had larger brains and knew how to put those neurons to good use. About 1.9 million years ago, a new star emerged, Homo erectus. These creatures not only walked upright, but also had brains that were almost twice the size of the handyman's. They took the world by surprise, becoming the first of our direct ancestors to venture out of the African continent. They even knew how to tame fire. Approximately 700,000 years ago, the world witnessed a culinary revolution. The earliest evidence of cooking appeared. And around 500,000 years ago, our ancestors decided it was time to become a bit more fashionable, donning the first evidence of clothing. Our very own species came to be just 300,000 years ago. Told you we were late to the party. But the world was never the same after the appearance of Homo sapiens, the anatomically modern humans. Alongside our other relatives, we emerged, ready to conquer the world with our innovative minds and complex societies. The exact path of our evolution remains a bit of a mystery. But what we do know for sure is that Neanderthals joined the party around at some point too. As Homo sapiens flourished, so did our capacity for language. Modern speech is believed to have emerged almost hand in hand with our species. We started expressing ourselves, sharing stories, and shaping the world with our words. So, there you have it. It took 13.8 billion years of cosmic history for humans to make their entrance. Think about it. 99.998% of the time since the Big Bang, we weren't even around. Our species, Homo sapiens, is the toddler of the Earth's family, existing for just the tiniest fraction of the universe's timeline. Yet, in this blink of an eye, we've managed to unravel the entire story that led to our existence. The story won't end with us. It's an ongoing saga, still being written with every passing moment.
Dinosaurs are some of the most fascinating creatures to have ever walked Earth. It's a shame that we won't be able to have Jurassic Park, where we can see some of the coolest creatures come to life. But we are actually living with some creatures that are just as old as dinosaurs, such as crocodiles and sharks. They haven't changed much since they appeared millions of years ago. But most dinos didn't make it when the asteroid struck Earth. In a way, the asteroid was a giant reset button for the planet. After hitting Earth, this space traveler wiped out almost every living thing. The sky was covered with ash, which blocked out sun rays. That meant that plants couldn't grow, and this made a lot of herbivores, really hungry. As a result, they had to change their diet and adapt to the new changes. This forced some of those dinosaurs to take on a new path in life, turning into some modern animals we know today. If the asteroid had changed its course just a bit, then dinosaurs would have remained the dominant species. So, what would have happened if dinosaurs had stuck around? Well, first of all, evolution would have played out differently for them. Maybe during those millions of years, humans would not have evolved to be on top of the food chain. Imagine a world where dinosaurs still existed today. If dinosaurs had evolved as humans did, then we'd have to compete with them. There were multiple species of humans, but Homo sapiens, also known as us, prevailed. A humanoid dino or dinoid would be something strange. First of all, they would look different, more reptilian than us. Our brain sizes would differ, and they would be physically bigger and stronger. Putting a human and a dinoid side by side would be interesting. First of all, dinoids would have scales as opposed to human skin, and their teeth would be sharper. They would probably not have 5 fingers on each hand, and their nails would be sharp claws. Also, we don't know what they would sound like, but they'd possibly be guttural like crocodiles. Dinosaurs had very good vision compared to mammals, so it's possible we'd see dinoids with large eyes. The population of Earth has reached a staggering 8 billion people, and we've changed our environment to suit our needs. With that said, if dinoids were the dominant creatures, then the environment would be suited for them. Speaking of physical features, scientists predicted what dinoids would look like if they had evolved into intelligent creatures that walked upright and had opposable thumbs. These wiggly thumbs are important for evolution, since they helped humans start using tools for defending themselves and hunting. The creature may not look like the ideal reptile, and its appearance might not be flattering. But if dinosaurs had evolved, then these creatures could be your classmate or colleague at work. Not all dinosaurs were alike, as their fossils have shown. Some were gigantic, while others resembled any modern-day animal. The biggest land-walking dinosaur was the titanosaur, although the measurements are only rough estimates based on fossilized bones. It's estimated that the dino was around 122 feet long and lived between 100 to 95 million years ago. It was so massive that its weight was equivalent to 18 modern-day elephants. There were dinosaurs all over the world in different time eras, climates, and landscapes. However, only a handful were known as giants. But though they excelled in body size, they lacked in brain size. Some of the most well-known dinosaurs, like the Allosaurus and Stegosaurus, had very small brains, like me, which means it would have been nearly impossible for them to properly evolve into intelligent beings. Tell me about it. But in the late Cretaceous period, the T-Rex roamed the land. It had larger brains than its Allosaurus counterparts, which were millions of years behind. Even so, the T-Rex's brain only weighed just under a pound. A human brain is nearly 3 pounds. It might have been cool to see a T-Rex evolve into an intelligent being with opposable thumbs on its tiny stick hands. Contrary to popular belief, the T-Rex was actually quite slow, and a human could have easily outrun it. So, we know that these days, they wouldn't belong in any competitive sports that involve running. We know that dinosaurs could be herbivores and carnivores. But throughout their evolution, one thing remained the same: they had small brains. Other forms of dinosaurs were around too, such as long-legged and horned dinosaurs. Either way, they were on top of the food chain even when little mammals had cameo appearances. We have to consider that when the asteroid struck and wiped out dinosaurs, mammals took over the scene. If dinosaurs and mammals had shared the dominant position in the food chain and had followed a similar path in their evolution, then today's reality would be completely different than what we have now. Dinosaurs would have bigger brains and would compete with humans for the title of the smartest creature. One of the reasons why humans and parrots can talk is because of the strength and shape of our tongues. The evolved dinosaurs would have a different skull, shaped to fit such a tongue if they wanted to talk like humans. One of the reasons why humans made it to where we are now is because we evolved to stand upright to detect predators. This was one challenge we had to overcome in order to survive. But what would dinosaurs need to challenge if they were already the most dominant creatures? Some of the big-brained dinosaurs had long legs, which means they could run fast, detect predators, and grab food that otherwise would be beyond their reach. Their evolutionary path would be very different from that of humans, and maybe even more advanced. Their brains could have evolved into something impressive. They could turn out smarter than us and possess quicker reflexes. Imagine dinosaurs discovering gravity instead of Isaac Newton, or a dinosaur writing plays and poems better than William Shakespeare. Imagine dinosaurs possessing the creative knowledge to produce some of the finest art in history. Music and cinema would revolve around dinosaur culture, and fashion would look otherworldly. We would live in peace with dinoids, but we would certainly compete with them. The World Cup would feature dinosaurs and humans playing for their national teams, but clubs would be exclusively human or dinosaur. Some professions would be dominated solely by one species, and more physically demanding jobs would be taken by dinosaurs, like laborers and security guards. Eventually, dinosaurs would take over the world since they would be physically stronger than humans and would have better advantages than us. Humans, on the other hand, would need to figure out a way to keep up with dinosaurs. Mammals had a different path of evolution, where they never became gigantic super beasts as dinosaurs did. Instead, their brains developed and grew big. But even though humans are the smartest creatures on the planet, we don't have the biggest brain. Animals like orcas, whales, elephants, and other apes have bigger brains here. So why are we smarter than them? The answer is we don't know. The brain is the most complex organ we have, and we know so little about it. We don't even know exactly why it's so complex or why it behaves like that. Today's dinosaur descendants, like crows and parrots, have complex brains, which allows them to communicate, use tools, and even count. Bigger doesn't always mean better in this case. A parrot's brain is smaller than a cat's, but it's far more complex and intelligent than that of any feline out there. Some scientists argue that dinosaurs from the movies aren't 100% accurate, and that they used to have feathers. In terms of evolution, some small feathered dinos might have followed the path of primates. They might have evolved into a tree-dwelling primate that may also have followed the path of becoming another species of human. You know what? Every species on the planet needs to adapt to the world around it to survive. Human beings are no exception. We didn't exist millions of years ago. The oldest skeleton of a modern person ever found is about 196,000 years old. But even in this relatively short period of time, our species has evolved a lot. In fact, we've never stopped evolving. At least that's what some scientists think. And some of our traits seem to prove it. About 20,000 years ago, I wasn't around then, only children could drink milk without getting an upset stomach. But then humans domesticated animals like cows and goats. A new gene developed in people's bodies down the generations. Today, about a third of all the world's population can drink milk in adulthood. In fact, this ability actually developed independently among different groups of people all over the planet. Our jaws are also not as big as the ones our extinct relatives had. They got smaller because our soft processed food is nothing like the diet of our ancestors. Our teeth themselves have become smaller too, and some have even disappeared completely. Plenty of people may never develop third molars, known as wisdom teeth. But for our ancestors, these teeth were vital. Third molars usually develop when someone is 18 to 25 years old. By this time, most of our ancestors' teeth had become worn out, so the third molars were possibly replacements. But some slight changes in human anatomy may have nothing to do with evolution. For example, people have generally gotten taller over the past few hundred years. The most likely cause of this is simply better nutrition, as well as access to modern medical care, and perhaps basketball. But what changes await humanity in the future? Of course, nobody can tell for sure, but the experts do have some interesting theories. One possibility is that we could get shorter as we adapt to life on our overpopulated planet. Studies have shown that shorter people consume a lot less energy and resources than taller people. In the era of hunter-gatherers, humans didn't meet many others in their day-to-day lives. Now, people have to adapt to life in densely populated cities. And who knows, maybe given enough time, our genes will respond to this change and reduce the average person's height. Another possibility is that more and more people will look alike. Modern humans travel a lot. As different types of people interact and have children, our genes are becoming more and more mixed up. In the future, this might make some physical characteristics a lot more unusual, The average-looking person might have darker skin and hair, and traits like freckles or blue eyes could become a rarity. Some scientists think that evolution won't play an important role in our future at all. Unlike our ancestors who lived millions of years ago, we now have a very advanced culture based on cooperation and modern technology. So, we no longer need to literally struggle to survive. Because of this, we may actually stop developing as a species and remain pretty much the same far into the future. If our evolution does continue, though, there's a chance we'll become more complex and intelligent creatures. Because of technological progress, the way we deal with problems could depend more on our intelligence than our physical abilities. So our brains might become larger. This may already be happening. I know mine is getting bigger. Some scientists' measurements show that the skulls of Americans are actually getting bigger on average. The room in there for the brain has increased about the size of a tennis ball. Or maybe the opposite will happen, and our brains will shrink. This direction of development has actually been around for a lot longer. Some people think that the male human brain has been getting smaller for the past 20,000 years. Hey, just ask females. If it continues to decrease at the same rate for the next 20,000, it'll end up being the same size as the brain of an archaic human who lived about 2 million years ago. Wait, does that mean we're becoming less intelligent? Well, a bigger brain doesn't always mean greater intellect. We just might be evolving to have smaller but super efficient brains. Another theory is that our bodies might learn to use calories from fast food. Things like pizza, fries, and donuts contain trans fats. These chemicals are difficult for our bodies to digest. But what if humans of the future somehow adapt to this kind of food, if we eat it for long enough? After all, the same process has already happened with milk. In a few thousand years, people may develop genes that can break down trans fats and absorb something healthy from them. If they still enjoy eating burgers and fries, of course. Donuts. People of the future might have less hair than we do today. Hair was vital for our ancestors. It helped regulate their body temperature, keeping them warm in cold climates and cool in hot environments. Even today, we still have practically the same amount of hair as many apes do. But some scientists have pointed out that our hair is nowhere as near as important to our survival as it once was. Since we now have modern heating systems and clothing for any environment, maybe given enough time, we'll become a lot less hairy. Then they'll be saying, he wasn't very fuzzy, was he? Yet our hair still serves many purposes. Our eyelashes protect our eyes from dust, and eyebrows keep them clear of sweat. Some experts think the hair on our heads even helps stabilize the temperature of the brain. So we probably won't become completely hairless, just a little smoother. And now the bad news. Human beings of the future may have weakened immune systems and become more vulnerable to illnesses. New medical technology and antibiotics can improve our health, but there's the risk that they could make our immune system lazier and unprepared for fighting infections over time. Many generations down the line, it's possible that the human body might not be able to withstand even simple diseases without serious medical help. Today, human development isn't determined by biology alone. Technology also plays a role. Maybe one day, people will stop waiting for evolution to give them what they want and begin to change themselves using advanced tech. Doctors already use artificial devices to help people with health problems. So who's to say that machinery and computers won't be used in the far future to completely change our physical abilities? Our descendants might get different kinds of brain implants. Or it could be that people will be equipped with artificial eyes with camera functions. But in this scenario, we could also end up being less knowledgeable. Why learn a foreign language or remember historical dates when all the world's information has been downloaded right into your brain? If human beings eventually become a multi-planet species and colonize Mars, our bodies could begin to adapt to life beyond Earth in interesting ways. The contrast between the environment on Earth and the red planet is so huge that evolution may actually speed up. In this case, humans could adapt to the new physical conditions in as little as 6,000 years, or just a few hundred generations. In the low-gravity environment of outer space or alien worlds, the structure of our muscles could change. We won't need some of them, while others will develop more quickly. The amount of body fat we have may increase in a cold climate. Low temperatures may also make us grow thick, long hair again. Our skin may become more pigmented and therefore better protected from harmful UV radiation. And our eyelids might get thicker to protect our eyes from all the cosmic rays outside the Earth's atmosphere. Here's a young man in a business suit. He's got a secret. He's in the bathroom, standing in front of the mirror, washing his face with cold water to cheer up. There's no one else here besides him, but he's not alone. The guy looks nervous. He slaps his cheeks, looks in the mirror, and says, "Don't worry, we can deal with it. We've been going to this for so long, we will win." He said "we," not because he has a split personality. And no, he's not talking to someone else through a small microphone. He said "we" because he knows a secret. Technically, he's not all human, but a group of billions of living creatures. Him, you, and all the people on Earth aren't really who they think they are. Only 43% of your body is made up of human cells. The remaining 57% are microbes and bacteria. Now this guy is going on stage to tell us this secret. Get on the scales. See the number? Now subtract a little more than half from it. This is your actual weight. Everything else is microscopic organisms. It's hard to believe because, in this case, your body should constantly change its shape, disintegrating into tiny particles. You would see your skin pulsating and continually moving. Fortunately, this doesn't happen for two reasons. Firstly, microbes are tiny. Their movements aren't visible. Secondly, most of this microbial world is in a dark place we can't see. A place without access to oxygen. In our intestines. It's where billions of little creatures are roaming. Feeling kinda crowded, huh? Some of them appeared before we were born, but most were colonists who came with food and water. On your body's surface, all microbes come from the environment. Every corner of your skin is covered with microbes. No matter how you try, it's impossible to get rid of them. There are more microbes than human cells. Our genome consists of about 20,000 genes. The number of microbes genes in the human body is about 2 to 20,000 million. That means that technically, we're not people, but microbes. Fortunately, it's not so bad. The genome of microbes complements our own. Such a model of existence reveals many opportunities for medicine. The human microbiome includes bacteria, fungi, and other microorganisms, all of them divided into many species, and each type performs its own functions. Some microbes are responsible for vitamin extraction from food. Others help the breakdown of destructive substances. Another type helps your tummy digest food. A separate group regulates your immune system, protects it against ills, parasites, and viruses. Some control weight. Simply put, microbes make your life better, help your body function, and affect your health. There are microorganisms that provoke many diseases. They impair immunity or affect vital organs. Imagine you know exactly which bacteria are responsible for feeling unwell. Next, you find a way to rid yourself of them. It can be some pill with poison against those microbes. You drink it, and the cure erases all the harmful pests inside your body. A disease might appear because of the lack of beneficial microbes. This is one of the ways doctors heal many people in the world. Now let's say you've determined a group of microbes that help strengthen muscles. Then you find out which trace element helps these bacteria work faster and more efficiently. You add this vitamin to food or just get a pill containing 1 billion of these microbes. As a result, your muscles grow twice as fast. The presence of some microbes or the lack of others can show the state of your entire body. A sample of your microbes can indicate your level of health or the presence of some disease. Any person can improve their body not only with the help of genetic engineering, but with microbial medicine. Studying human microbes is cheaper, more efficient, and faster than expensive, complex gene modifications. This area is just beginning to develop all over the world, but there are already some discoveries. Previously, humanity thought microbes were enemies. We made up many ways to destroy bacteria and viruses. But along with the harmful germs, these cures get rid of the good ones. Now scientists understand that microbes can both take away and save lives. So they started large-scale research on this subject. Let's have a look at a big panda. This animal, with an ample supply of fat under its skin, is omnivorous. It rarely eats meat. Its diet mostly consists of berries and bamboo shoots. But in winter, there's none of this, so pandas feed on bamboo leaves. That food is low-calorie, there's almost no proteins in it. But still, pandas don't lose weight after a cold winter. Recently, scientists found out how pandas do that. It's all thanks to a unique microbiome. Every winter, a lot of unique bacteria are born in their intestines. These microbes extract and synthesize helpful substances from bamboo leaves better than others, and thus preserve the panda's weight. Scientists put these bacteria inside field mice. Small rodents began to gain weight much faster. Hamburgers, cakes, and other heavy foods contain calories and help develop colonies of microbes that contribute to weight. Millions of species of microbes have millions of functions. In theory, each of these functions can be used for the sake of humans. So, imagine you need to lose or gain weight, and you just add these microbes to your lunch. Do you want to sleep better or fight drowsiness? Drink microbes that will affect the production of sleep hormones. Do you want to strengthen the bone tissue? No problem! Bacteria are not only inside our bodies, they're everywhere. Part of the planet is made up of microbes. These tiny organisms are constantly multiplying. Look, there are 1 trillion of them on your keyboard. One bacterium increases in size and splits into 2 bacteria. After a few minutes, these 2 increase and divide again. 4 microorganisms appear. Each of them splits in 2. The colony of bacteria is rapidly growing. With such quick reproduction, one microbe can make 1 ton of offspring in just 24 hours. After 5 days, bacteria will fill all the seas and oceans. They will weigh more than the whole planet. Under ideal conditions, bacteria could take over the whole world. However, this will never happen. There are no such perfect conditions for uncontrolled bacterial growth. The speed they multiply at is equal to the speed of their destruction. Dryness, water, light, high temperature, gases, humidity, all these phenomena help control their population. At the same time, microbes are in charge of most of the chemical reactions on Earth. An old apple on the ground is rotting because of germs and bacteria. Mold forms on bread because of microorganisms. But they don't just exist and affect the condition of any material and other living creatures. An endless battle for survival continues in the world of microorganisms. Giant bacteria absorb smaller ones. Microbes with spikes defeat long microbes. There are also viruses that penetrate bacteria and infect them with their cells. A small ball with a virus can destroy an entire colony of microbes. Viruses multiply and take over more and more territories until they meet strong immune cells on their way. There are also creatures resembling robots. They look like diamonds with mechanical legs. Despite this unusual appearance, they're 100% natural. We call them bacteriophages. They have only one purpose: to destroy all bacteria. Bacteriophages are additional protection of the planet from uncontrolled reproduction of microbes. When some microorganisms multiply, they leave decay waste. This waste is harmful to humans. Bacteriophages fight these microbes and save our lives. The coolest thing is that these defenders don't seek to take over the planet. They only attack bacteria. Every second, billions of microbes battle with billions of bacteriophages on any surface. Sounds like a video game. The crystal-headed jumps on the bacterium and injects the genetic code inside it. This code has separate elements that connect to each other inside the microbe's body and becomes a new bacteriophage. Then it destroys the bacterium from the inside and goes for the next one. Look closely at your fingertip. There's a lot of life there. The strongest survive, the weak disappear. Wash it off, and new bacteria will come along with the water. Wipe your wet finger with a towel, and new germs will jump on you from there. And the battle will begin again. This is just the tip of your finger. Inside your body, some bacteria are fighting for your health against microbes that want to harm you. Some microbes in our intestine can be responsible for a good or bad mood. There are also parasitic bacteria that can affect our brain, the way we think, and our emotions. Some creatures control the behavior of animals and insects. Scientists constantly make discoveries in the world of microorganisms. So, bacteria are the rulers of our world. They appeared long before humans and the first animals, and most likely, they'll remain after us. Think about that.
You're walking down the street. You see a strange-looking antique shop called Ageless Trinkets of Mr. Bright. You're curious, so you enter there. You take a look at all the weird stuff. Suddenly, an old folded parchment paper catches your attention. It's a world map, but something's off with it. Instead of showing the countries as you know them, it shows the locations of 4 mythical lost worlds and civilizations. Mr. Bright, the shop owner, comes next to you after realizing your shock. This map won't let you find these places or anything, but I can explain to you the legends behind them if you want, he says. Let me begin with Atlantis. You might know it as Aquaman's underwater kingdom, but Atlantis, the fictional island, was actually first introduced in 2 of Plato's works. According to him, Atlantis was a highly advanced civilization that existed about 9,000 years before his own time, and its story had been passed down by poets, authors, and others. He wrote about Atlantis and its citizens to give a moral lesson and to teach about the dangers of arrogance, as well as the eventual downfall of those who are after too much power. In his dialogues, Plato stated that Atlantis was a great and powerful empire that was respected in all parts of the world. It was founded by beings who were half deities and half human, and became a great naval power after a while. Being an island filled with gold, silver, and other precious metals certainly helped their case. But besides that, it was also known for its breathtaking architecture and state-of-the-art technology, as well as its countless rare and exotic wild animals. Atlanteans were proud of their great achievements and the perfection of their civilization, but their excessive pride was going to bring their downfall. They believed they were so superior that they could gain control over any nation. This led them to launch a series of invasions. They conquered many of the Mediterranean lands, but when it was time to enter Athens, Athenians pushed back with an extraordinary force, so the Atlanteans were finally defeated. Plato stated that deities then got angry at Atlanteans because of how wicked, greedy, and immoral they became. So they punished them by sending earthquakes, which caused Atlantis to sink beneath the sea. Although the earliest written records of Atlantis were Plato's works, some people still believed his story to be based on truth and tried to identify the island of Atlantis with actual countries. Some people suggested it may have been located in the Mediterranean Sea, near the coast of Spain or Italy. Others thought it may have been located in the Caribbean, off the coast of Central or South America, but there was no solid evidence to support any of these claims. One theory, in particular, seemed more plausible than the others, though. Located in the Aegean Sea, the island of Santorini was the home of a highly advanced Minoan society. However, due to a huge volcanic eruption, it was destroyed about 3,600 years ago, causing the Minoan civilization to suddenly disappear. These similarities between the fictional Atlanteans and the historical Minoans made Santorini a good candidate for the speculations. Yet again, there were still major flaws with it, such as how the time when Plato said Atlantis was destroyed doesn't coincide with the time of Santorini's eruption. So Atlantis still continues to be regarded as nothing more than a popular legend in the scientific world. Now, let's move toward the northeast direction on the map, Mr. Bright says. According to Celtic Breton mythology, there once was a magnificent city called Ys, also known as Caris, that towered over Douarnenez Bay in France's Brittany region. It was the most wealthy city in the entire Atlantic. It was especially famous for its beautiful gardens and buildings, and its citizens were all living comfortably and happily there. Dahut, who was King Bradlon's daughter in Breton legends and literature, had a deep love for the sea. She begged her father to build a city at the edge of the sea, and that is how the city of Ys was established. Little did she know that she would be the one responsible for the destruction of her father's beloved gift. You see, since the city was surrounded by the sea, it needed to be protected by a dike equipped with floodgates, and these gates could only be opened at low tide. And the only one who had the keys to these gates was the king himself. One day, a handsome red knight arrived at the city, but couldn't pass the gates. Dahut was so taken by him that she wanted to let him in. She knew that her father was the keeper of the only key to the city, so she sneaked into his room and stole it from him. Then she gave it to the Red Knight so that he could enter the city and they could be together. However, the Red Knight turned out to be the Prince of Darkness, and he intentionally left the gate open to the raging sea. The waves soon swallowed all of Ys. King Gradlon was able to escape on his magical horse, but Dahut couldn't. She turned into an evil mermaid who lured sailors into the sea. Today, if you go to Quimper, a city in Brittany, northwest France, you can find the statue of King Gradlon riding on his horse. Although the city of Ys is a legend, Brittany coast locals believe that on the days when the waters are calm, you can still hear the tolls of the city bells deep under the sea, if you listen carefully. Mr. Bright then points at the Indian Ocean on the map and says, "Now, have you heard about Lemuria?" Back in the mid-1800s, a few scientists suggested that there was once a continent that existed in the Indian Ocean, somewhere close to the south of modern-day Sri Lanka. The first one to popularize this theory was the British lawyer and zoologist Philip Lutley Sclater. In his paper, The Mammals of Madagascar, he stated that he found lemur fossils in India and not in Africa. However, this discovery was extremely shocking to him because of the fact that lemurs' original homeland, Madagascar, is much closer to Africa. He proposed that this was possible only if some larger continent connected the two once. He stated that this continent must have eventually sunk to the ocean floor. He then named it Lemuria, and hence the theory was born. People who came after Sclater took his theory a step further and thought that Lemuria was also the home of an extinct race of humans called Lemurians, who had 4 arms and enormous bodies, and were also the ancestors of modern-day humans, as well as lemurs. Of course, as new scientific discoveries were made on plate tectonics, evolution, and the study of DNA, the theories regarding the fictional continent called Lemuria were debunked. The last fictional land on the map is Agartha, Mr. Bright says. Taking its roots from Eastern mysticism, one legend says there's a kingdom called Agartha that is located deep beneath the surface of the earth. It's where all 4 corners of the world are connected by paths and tunnels. It is said that there's a secret entrance into Agartha hidden in the Gobi Desert, and it's built by Agarthans themselves using advanced technology that can't be detected by us, the surface folks. According to some beliefs, Agartha exists to counterbalance the energies of those who live above the surface. While we live in a state of rush and heightened emotions, this world beneath us is the total opposite. Some even say that those who escaped Atlantis fled here to continue their lives inside the Earth's core. And yet, others think it's actually a land that's crawling with all kinds of monsters. But there's no need to be scared, since modern science proved Earth's core is not actually hollow and is a solid hot iron ball. So you can cancel your journey plans to the center of the Earth if you've made any. Thanks, Mr. Bright.
Imagine that one day, poof, all the big, furry, and feathered creatures just vanish into thin air. Humans disappear as well, and now there's nothing left but microbes. What would happen to Earth? How long would it take for complex creatures to appear again? And what would they be like? Alright, welcome to the microbial world. Microbes are the tiniest building blocks of life, so small you can't even see them without a microscope. In this amazing world, there are 3 main groups of microbes: bacteria, archaea, and the single-celled organisms. Bacteria are everywhere, from the air you breathe to the food you eat. Some bacteria are good buddies, helping us digest our food, and even making yogurt taste yummy. but some of them can be mischievous and cause infections. Archaea are the tough explorers of our microscopic universe. Archaea are the daredevils of microbes, and they showed us that life can survive in the craziest conditions. For example, they can thrive in super hot springs, even in incredibly scorching temperatures. Some of them are even capable of living in volcanoes. They also feel pretty fine in the freezing cold. Certain bacteria can get busy even in icy places like the Arctic and Antarctica. There, they help break down things like old plants and animals that got frozen in time. They work as nature's cleanup crew, turning leftovers into useful bits. Or imagine the darkest depths of the ocean where sunlight can't reach. And who do we meet down there? Microbes again, who make food from all the weird chemicals in the water. And of course, they also live inside you. You're a walking microbe party. Your gut alone is a cozy home to trillions of bacteria that help you digest food and stay healthy. And finally, the single-celled organisms. They can be plant-like, making their own food through photosynthesis, or animal-like, hunting for their next tiny meal. Some single-celled organisms can even team up to form colonies that work together and build complex structures. All these microbes are the foundation of life. At first, there were nothing but microbes on Earth. They were just hanging out and enjoying the simple life. But time kept ticking, and the more years passed, the more they evolved. They changed a little, sometimes acquiring some special abilities and passing these abilities on to their children. Generations come and go, and those changes keep adding up. Microbes became more and more complex. And after billions of years and trillions of changes, they become something as amazing as the animals, plants, and people we see on Earth today. It was a very long and tedious process, so let's try to repeat it now. Like, what if all living organisms on our modern Earth, except for the first microbes, would disappear? Without the hustle and bustle of life, the world would become eerily quiet. Streets that were once filled with people and animals would now be empty and peaceful. Buildings and cities would stand alone like silent monuments to the vanished world. First, we would have a huge disruption of food chains. Without plants, herbivores, and carnivores, the intricate food chains and webs that sustain life would simply collapse. Our world wouldn't be as wild and vibrant. The tiny microbes are cool, but they can't recreate the same big, bustling party that we all love. Also, remember how we mentioned that microbes often eat the leftovers of animals and other organisms? Just like when you eat cake and turn it into energy, they turn these bits into nutrients that the Earth loves. But now, without the big animals and plants, there wouldn't be as much leftover cake. The microbes would still work hard, but their evolution would be really slowed down. Now, you might think that without plants, we wouldn't have any more oxygen. But this isn't entirely true. In fact, trees produce only about 20 to 30% of the oxygen on Earth. So who really helps us breathe? Plankton from SpongeBob. But seriously, ocean plankton, especially phytoplankton, which is responsible for around 80% of Earth's oxygen production. Phytoplankton are considered microorganisms. They're tiny, single-celled or colonial organisms that float around in the oceans, harnessing sunlight. So, if all land plants and animals disappeared, oceanic plankton would still continue to produce oxygen in the oceans through photosynthesis. They would become even more essential for maintaining a breathable atmosphere. Although now these guys would face some big challenges. You see, big animals like whales and fish usually provide nutrients to the ocean. These nutrients are plant food that phytoplankton need to grow and thrive. Without the big animals, there might be fewer of these special nutrients around. The phytoplankton might not grow as well. And since these guys act as the bottom of the ocean food chain, that could have a domino effect on the whole ocean food web. And also, with fewer plants, there's less oxygen being made, and carbon dioxide starts to stick around more. The balance of gases in the air would change a bit, and when the balance tips, it can affect the weather. The Earth's temperature and the way wind moves would change too. Plus, too much carbon dioxide can make the air feel a bit stuffy. Next, animals like moles, ants, and worms as nature's engineers. They're digging tunnels, burrows, and homes in the ground. When these animals dig and move around, they're actually helping the soil. They mix it up and create pathways for air and water to travel through. It's like they're giving the soil a good shake to keep it healthy. So without the animal engineers, the soil might get a bit packed and tight. Water from rain wouldn't be able to seep in as easily. When they're gone, the nutrients aren't getting spread around as much, and the soil might miss its tasty treats. So the whole ecosystem underground could become less cozy and more cramped. But the most interesting question is, what would happen to all our human artifacts? People disappeared, but their builds remained. Let's look at how this could affect the development of microbes on Earth. Our human-made things need proper care. So, if there were no more people around, all these things would be destroyed very fast. Microbes can grow on surfaces, and over time, they would start to cover buildings, streets, and structures. It might not be visible right away, but given enough time, you'd see a thin layer of microbial growth. Nature is a powerful thing. Buildings that were once shielded by human maintenance would now be exposed to the elements. Wind, rain, sun, and snow would all destroy and break down everything we've ever created. And some places on Earth have really tough weather, super hot summers, freezing winters, or crazy storms. In these areas, buildings and cities might even get sadder faster. Microbes would contribute to this too, as some of them produce acids that can break down materials. Slowly, cracks might appear, and materials like concrete and wood might weaken. Humans overestimate their power when they call themselves kings of nature. If we disappeared, in just a couple of thousand years, there would be almost no traces of human civilization left. It would be like we never even existed. But in any case, this event would offer an exciting opportunity for microbes to evolve in a completely new way. With the spotlight all to themselves, they're free to explore and adapt to their surroundings. Some places might become more challenging, while others might become easier to conquer. Microbes reproduce quickly, sometimes in just a matter of minutes. This rapid evolution could lead to a burst of new microbial species. Could microbes rehabitate the planet? Absolutely. Over time, new species of animals and plants would begin to appear. Like the butterfly effect, any small changes would have led to completely new types of life, and perhaps to new types of humans. In any case, these rapidly evolving microbes could reshape the way ecosystems work. They'd interact with each other in new ways, creating intricate relationships and cycles. The balance of life on Earth might be very different from what we know today. What would it look like? Let's leave that to your imagination.
With more than 8 billion people in the world today, it's hard to imagine there was a time when there were so few human beings that they almost went extinct. It happened about 900,000 years ago when our ancient ancestors faced a crisis. Recent studies tell us there were only about 1,280 of them left, which is an incredibly small number. It's like just one village or a very, very small town left alone on the whole planet. The human race got into a population bottleneck where almost 98% of people disappeared, and things were tough for them for more than 100,000 years. We don't completely understand why this happened, but it was likely the result of tremendous changes in Earth's climate. It was a time when periods of cold weather lasted longer, the sea was colder, and there were more glaciers. Monsoons were immensely powerful, and yet there was less rain. These changes had an impact on wildlife species in Africa and Eurasia, and many plants and animals that were food sources for people disappeared. But at some point, our ancestors showed their strength and managed to bounce back despite tough times. The numbers started to go up again because people learned how to handle fire better. Plus, temperatures got warmer too. But what would the world look like if nature had defeated us and it all had really stopped for humanity back then? Let's take a trip to some parallel dimension where it really happened. In that universe, there wouldn't be empires, pyramids, and impressive achievements that some old civilizations left us. No neighborhoods, cities, your favorite park, or that bench where you like to sit and drink your coffee. No coffee. Ouch, that hurts. No pools, adventure parks, and no rush at the beaches. No creature would be able to go to another continent separated by the ocean. There would be no ships or planes that could carry it. Animals would have to wait for tectonic plates to move again to visit new territories. Wow, you've just realized how incredibly silent the world is. All because nature almost never produces as much noise as humans do. Our buildings are noisy, together with cars, motorcycles, and all other vehicles. If you live somewhere by the airport, you know how much noises planes can make too. And here, no one's phone's ringing. You don't hear music coming from bars or gyms. Wow, look how incredibly blue the sky is. You've never seen a sky like that in your world. The rain and wind scrub the surface of our planet clean, although there's not much work to be done since there's no dust and smog humans produce. I mean, there is dust, but a different kind, one that nature creates. We don't really notice it since we have so many heaters and air conditioning systems that blow air and all that dust around. The only drinking water you see is in lakes and rivers, and lots of different animals get together in these areas. It takes a while to get used to it. Wherever you go, there are wild animals passing by. There are no dogs, cats, or other pets you're used to. There's no electricity either. In case you've brought your phone, take pictures as fast as possible because you won't be able to charge your gadget when it runs out of battery. There's no internet though, so you'll be the only one who will see the photos. It's so weird to see grass so tall and wild. No one mows it, so it's hard to walk, especially considering there are no roads. And you don't have a scythe or any other tool that could help you clear your way, because human civilization hasn't reached that level of progress. Wow, there are plants you've never seen before. Every time a tree drops a seed, something new might grow. And there are no humans to select which plants they like and which they don't. You suddenly feel nostalgic, thinking of carrots, broccoli, potatoes, and all other vegetables people once started growing on their farms. You can hear tons of bugs buzzing around. We usually do everything to get rid of them, and now, without humans, you get to see how annoying they really are. Hey, the sun is going down. Without electric lights, all creatures just follow the rhythm of nature. So, if you're up for a late-night walk, wait for the moon and stars to lighten your path. But be aware of night predators. You may face creatures that didn't survive in the world where humans rule. Fire. Luckily, there's a river nearby, so you jump into the water to get to the other side. Fires happen more frequently in the world without humans. For instance, lightning can strike a tree or set a brush on fire. No one is there to put the flames out, so fires just keep spreading until at some point they burn themselves out. It's hard to see the world like this, but it's even harder to accept that Earth is fine without us. Just like it's doing well without dinosaurs, megalodons, woolly mammoths, dodos, and other ancient creatures that went extinct. Back to the research. Some scientists don't think our ancient ancestors were really that close to extinction. To get these results, researchers used FitCool, a special tool that helps study changes in ancient human populations by looking at the genetic information of modern people. They examined DNA from over 3,000 individuals in Africa and other places for this study. Some believe that the actual population numbers might have been bigger. The method used focuses on a small group of breeding individuals and may not exactly represent the whole population. There may be many archaeological sites in Eurasia and Africa that date back to the time when this population decline might have happened, so it may have affected just some groups of people in certain areas. Either way, not only wasn't it the end, but it was a new beginning. Two ancestral chromosomes combined to create a structure known as chromosome 2 in modern humans. This might have been the start of a new species, because there was a split between our ancestors and other ancient humans, such as Neanderthals and Denisovans, our ancient cousins. Some evidence tells us this idea is plausible, because our common ancestor lived about 500,000 to 700,000 years ago. Well, humans did survive all those devastating moments in history, but scientists believe that the extinction of our species is a matter of when, not if. Our fields will overgrow, cities will end up in ruins, and bridges will fail. Nature quickly reclaims the landscape where humans don't go. Check out how these roots and trees have taken over the temple in Cambodia. Roman ruins still defy time for over 1,500 years now. Some of the buildings and things we create in the modern world will do it too. Nature will break everything down at some point, and if humans were to go extinct, who would replace us? It took 200 million years for our kind to evolve from the first mammals. Who can repeat this entire process again? The last common ancestor of chimps and humans lived 8 million years ago. Knowing this, it seems possible that if Homo sapiens went extinct, a new species capable of using technologies would evolve from chimps. But hold on. There's something called the Fermi paradox. Even though there are hundreds of millions of rocky planets that could host life in our galaxy, we don't see any evidence of its existence. Our galaxy is 13.5 billion years old, so you can't say life hasn't had time to develop. One possible explanation is that certain crucial steps in the evolution of intelligent life are so rare they hardly ever happen. So, Earth would get along fine without us. The only ones who would care are us. And right now, we need to care a lot.
Good day, Brightsiders. My name is Tom, and today let's pretend it's year 2003. The place? Indonesia, the island of Flores. A group of scientists found a mysterious cave in the green jungle. They went inside and discovered some primitive tools like sharpened stones. The researchers understood that this place was home to our distant ancestors hundreds of thousands of years ago. But then, they found a very unusual skeleton. A careful analysis showed that it was the skeleton of a 30-year-old woman. Her height was only 3.5 feet. It's just above the waist of a grown-up person. That day, scientists discovered an unknown human ancestor. They called this species Homo floresiensis, or simply the Hobbit. More and more scientists arrived at the cave and carried out detailed excavations. The archaeologists found the remains of 8 more little people. It seemed that hundreds, thousands of years ago, there was an entire species of hobbits. Also, the scientists discovered the remains of some amazing creatures. It turned out that the cave was a real fantasy world in the distant past. For example, the researchers found skeletons of huge storks the size of pterodactyls. The hobbits seemed tiny compared to these birds. The scientists also discovered the remains of what seemed to be a relative of the modern elephant. The creature was the size of a cat. But the most astonishing discovery was the ancient Komodo dragon. The bone analysis showed that all these creatures were not the owners of the cave. More than 80% of the identifiable bones belonged to giant rats. Hundreds and thousands of rats the size of cats inhabited the place. It's possible that a real battle once occurred between them and the hobbits. Just imagine a world where the hobbits and small elephants run away from hordes of huge rats and hide in a cave, and massive storks are watching the events unfolding in front of their eyes. Anyway, the analysis of the remains showed that Homo floresiensis was a different species from modern humans. For example, the researchers analyzed the hobbit's wrist bone and found out that these bones resembled those of monkeys, not those of modern humans. The hobbits' heads had a flat, sloping forehead and a short face, and their teeth and jaws resembled those of Australopithecus. But then, the scientists uploaded all the data from the skull they found into a computer program to create a 3-dimensional image of the hobbit's face. and the computer showed the head of a woman who looked much more like a modern human than like a monkey. But the same skull analysis also showed that the hobbit's brain was about 3 times as small as that of the average modern person. This suggests that their mental abilities were probably not very well developed. The analysis of the bones and tools showed that Homo floresiensis could have lived between 190,000 and 50,000 years ago. It's even possible they lived next to the ancestors of modern people. To find out exactly who the hobbits were and what branch of human evolution they belonged to, scientists started a large-scale investigation. A race of pygmies lived not far from the cave. Scientists have found a great similarity in the facial proportions of the hobbits and the pygmies. This tribe could be the direct descendants of the discovered species. The pygmies themselves claimed it was true. They brought food and flowers to the cave as a sign of respect to their ancestors. But to know for sure, scientists needed to do a genetic test. They hired 2 translators, from English to Indonesian, and from Indonesian to the Pygmy language. The researchers explained to the tribe what they wanted to do, and the Pygmies agreed. They showed sincere enthusiasm because they were also very interested in their history. The scientists took saliva samples from 32 volunteers. All they had to do was compare them with the DNA of the hobbits. But that's where a serious problem arose. Extracting DNA from such ancient remains turned out to be an impossible task. That's why the scientists decided to compare the DNA of the pygmies with the DNA of other people from nearby islands and countries. They studied the DNA of 500 modern people from 225 populations in East Asia, Malaysia, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, and other countries. The researchers wanted to find matches and differences between the pygmies' DNA and the DNA of the surrounding tribes. They also analyzed the history of the people from these areas and their migration patterns. When the investigation was over, the scientists had to admit they hadn't found any evidence that the pygmies had descended from the ancient hobbits. Homo floresiensis is likely a totally separate species, and its role in the development of modern humans is still unknown. The hobbits' height can be explained by such a phenomenon as insular dwarfism. Unique ecosystems appear on small and remote islands. There are often lots of food sources there, as well as there is a higher chance of survival thanks to the absence of dangerous animals. The climate contributes to development of an unusual ecosystem too. In such conditions, many living creatures become smaller. It happened to little hippos in Madagascar, and small elephants lived on the island of Flores. But sometimes, such ecosystems can create huge animals, just like it happened with the rats and the storks. By the way, gigantic rats still live on the island. In the modern world, there's an unusual village inhabited by dwarfs. There are many small houses there made of clay and stone that resemble little castles. In the streets you can find statues of fairies, large butterflies, and silver balls. The locals wear strange costumes: knight's armor, princess dresses, green tunics, and yellow cloaks. At the main square, dwarfs fight with swords, dance, and sing songs. But there's no magic here. You're in the Dwarf Empire, and before you get inside, you have to pay a $50 entry fee. More than 10 years ago, a Chinese businessman met several dwarfs. They told him about the difficulties they've come across in the modern world. The businessman felt sympathy for these people and decided to invest $14 million in creating a themed town inhabited by dwarves. So in 2009, the World Eco Garden of Butterflies and the Dwarf Empire was born. About 100 people live in this place. Their height doesn't exceed 4.5 feet, and they're all younger than 50 years old. Every day, this place attracts hundreds of tourists. Thanks to this, dwarves have jobs and all the conditions for a good life. All employees of the village get a salary of several $100s per month, and they are also provided with free housing and free food. Many little people who have nowhere to go come to this place and find a new home and a new family. By the way, there's another village inhabited by dwarves in China. In Yangtze village, about 40% of all residents are born to be half the height of ordinary people, and no one knows exactly why this happens. Some believe the reason is the high content of mercury in the soil and the presence of toxic gases in the air. There's also a legend that says that once upon a time, a resident of this village caught a black turtle with unusually long legs. He decided to eat this creature, and because of this, the turtle cursed the village. Currently, the number of little people living there is decreasing, and new generations have regular height. Unfortunately, it's difficult to study this phenomenon because the place is closed to press and to visitors. 100 years ago, a small Iranian village existed, with its inhabitants no taller than 3 feet. And long before that, the inhabitants' height could reach 10 inches. This place is 1,500 years old and is considered the birthplace of dwarves. The short stature of people who lived there is associated with poor nutrition. The climate in the region is hot and dry, hence it was impossible to grow crops or breed cattle there. Mostly, they ate turnips and barley. The inhabitants of the village never tasted meat. Only in the 20th century, when roads were built and cars became available, it became possible to bring better food there. Now, about 700 people live in the village, and they are all of average height. But small houses made of stone and clay are the proof that dwarves lived there. Such houses are easier to build and heat, but the most important thing is they were invisible to foreign conquerors. The residents hoped that the unique architecture of the place might one day attract more tourists. Thank you for watching. My name is Tom, and see you in the next video where we continue to learn every day together with Brightside. Bye.
Admit it, whenever you think about Neanderthals, you picture these large, human-like creatures wandering around, bumping their heads, afraid of fire, and making weird noises. That's really far from the truth. There's actually more Neanderthal DNA in your genome than you know. It's estimated that up to 4% of the DNA of some modern humans can be traced back to Neanderthals. If you have no idea who these people were, let me get you up to speed. The Neanderthal was a species of early humans that lived in Europe and Western Asia as early as 200,000 years ago. As for their appearance, they looked sort of like us, but they were physically stronger. Their skeleton was also more durable and able to cope with the harsh environment. I mean, 200,000 years ago, people didn't live in houses or apartment complexes. So, their bodies needed to be able to survive in the wild. What's even more surprising is that their brain was larger than ours. But did that make them smarter? To answer that question, let's look at how these people lived back then. Neanderthals were hunter-gatherers, meaning they had to hunt and search for food. Back in their prime years, farming wasn't a la mode yet. They were skilled at making tools and objects to protect themselves with, like spears and stone knives. They used these things to hunt animals, yes, but also to make clothing. And speaking of garments, a new study showed that Neanderthals might have been more fashionable than we'd previously suspected. These recent findings show that they may have been skilled in using plants to create yarn. This is based on the discovery of pieces of fabric from over 50,000 years ago in parts of Europe, where Neanderthals used to live. This is really important because it's rare for archaeologists to find perishable artifacts, such as plant products. Most of the things we find these days from previous eras are pottery and pieces of rocks and bones because they can better resist the test of time. Researchers used a special microscope to examine a cord fragment made of twisted fibers, which may have been used for a tool or net. Since it looks like they were able to twist plant fibers into making a cord, Neanderthals had probably been much smarter than we thought. It shows that they had great observational skills and were great at picking out which sort of plant was better to use. They also used fires to keep warm and cook food. It looks like Neanderthals were able to make use of flames that popped out spontaneously, but were not able to create them consistently. Scientists have looked at some Neanderthal sites and found large amounts of ash. That means they had to constantly maintain a fire because they were unable to start it again if it went out. Other specialists believe Neanderthals did use fire, but they did not necessarily need it due to their physical abilities, which allowed them to handle cold temperatures better than modern humans. So, what did Neanderthals eat? Scientists have been able to get a glimpse into their menu, but that's only because these ancient creatures had this nasty habit. They didn't brush their teeth. If you don't brush your teeth regularly, a film called dental plaque will form on the surface of your pearly whites. Over time, this plaque will harden and turn into tartar or dental calculus, which is a combination of minerals, microbes, and leftover pieces of food. Scientists can use bits of the material trapped in dental calculus on fossils to study what our distant cousins ate and what their lifestyles were like. They can also examine ancient DNA to determine the species of microbes present in the mouth of a Neanderthal. Turns out that those living in Belgium ate mostly meat, including woolly rhinoceros and wild sheep, according to the DNA found in their teeth. On the other hand, the Neanderthals found in the El Cedron cave in Spain had a more plant-based diet, including mushrooms, pine nuts, moss, and tree bark. Other Neanderthals from different locations also showed consistent evidence of eating plants. One of the Spanish Neanderthals even had dental problems, and the researchers found evidence of medicinal plants in his teeth. He may have been trying to treat his pain. Another study performed at the University of York found that Neanderthals had some sort of prehistoric healthcare system. It worked regardless of how bad the injury or illness was. The research suggests that this care was provided out of real concern rather than self-interest. This challenges the stereotypical image of Neanderthals as brutes and selfish creatures compared to modern humans. The study found that many Neanderthals had severe injuries requiring ongoing care, such as massage, fever management, and hygiene. One individual who was around 25 to 40 years old at the time of his passing had a degenerative disease that likely severely limited his ability to contribute to the group. Despite this, he was carefully buried, which shows that he remained an important part of the group, despite not being able to contribute much to the daily workload. In case you're wondering, Neanderthals aren't technically our direct ancestors. They're sort of a distant relative, if you'd like, because some of them lived at the same time as modern humans. We coexisted for thousands of years, with Neanderthals living in Europe and Western Asia, and modern humans spreading out of Africa around 50,000 years ago. There is evidence that the two species interacted and even interbred. That's why some humans today have Neanderthal DNA in their genetic makeup. However, the precise nature of their relationship is still debated among scientists. Despite their physical advantages, Neanderthals eventually went extinct. Some people think Neanderthals as a species were not successful because they disappeared a long time ago, but they actually did very well. They lived in difficult conditions for a very long time, much longer than modern humans have been around. Modern humans have only been around for about 100,000 years or so, and only started living in cold areas about 40,000 years ago. There are many factors that may have led to the extinction of Neanderthals. It is believed that changes in their natural climate and competition with modern humans were two of the main reasons. Neanderthals specialized in hunting certain animals, but when those animals went extinct, they may have struggled to find food. Additionally, modern humans had advantages, such as trade networks and better technology, including sewing needles or bows and arrows, which may have given them a competitive edge. Although there is no evidence of direct conflict between the two species, it is known that they interacted. Some people even believe that Neanderthals did not fully go extinct, since their traces of their DNA can still be found in some people. So, what if the Neanderthals hadn't gone extinct? Charles Darwin pointed out that many of the unique traits of humans, like emotions, intelligence, language, and social behavior, can also be seen in some form in other animals. Our closest relatives, such as Homo erectus and Neanderthals, were also quite similar to us. However, Homo sapiens are the only surviving members of the hominin group, which includes around 20 known and potentially many more unknown species of humans and human-like apes. Even if the Neanderthals had survived, they would have probably integrated into society and evolved at the same time as modern humans did. One theory suggests that since they were outnumbered at one point by Homo sapiens, their traits would have eventually merged with ours. Those less advantageous, like their inability to produce fire, would have disappeared over generations. Other theories suggest that maybe they wouldn't have wanted anything to do with us. Looking at our differences rather than our similarities, maybe they would have developed their own communities, choosing to live separately from the modern world. Either way, it's hard to predict how a species that disappeared so many years ago would behave today. But what we do know is that you need to think twice next time you want to call someone acting weird a Neanderthal. Your DNA might make you the Neanderthal in the room.
There's an amazing place in Ethiopia, East Africa, called Hadar. This place is a treasure trove. We found tons of old animal fossils there. And among those remnants, we discovered something very special: the fossils of a creature called Australopithecus afarensis. One of these guys was found almost complete. You might know it today by the name Lucy, after a famous song by the Beatles. Lucy was a small lady, only about as tall as a kitchen counter. She lived 3.2 million years ago and became a huge celebrity when we found her in 1974. She helped us learn more about our early ancestors, creatures called Australopithecines. Around 10 to 12 million years ago, there was a group of animals that broke into two branches. One of the branches led to modern apes, while the other led to humans. This separation happened because one group decided to stay in trees and became what we now call gorillas, chimpanzees, and orangutans. They moved around using all four limbs and lived in forests. But the other group decided to live on the ground and try walking on two legs. Because of that, their brains started getting bigger over time. And over millions of years, they became bald monkeys who watch videos on YouTube. Yeah, you know who you are. Lucy, like other Australopiths, was a bit different from us. She still looked like an ape and lived during a transitional stage. She could walk on two legs, but didn't do it all the time. Sometimes she climbed trees, just like a monkey. She and her buddies were the first step in human evolution. Then came a new branch of evolution, Homo habilis, or handyman. They were the first members of the Homo genus because they were the ones to start developing stone tools and first show human creativity. They probably used these tools for scavenging and processing food. We found the first clues about them back in the 1960s. They walked around East Africa about 3 million years ago. They were pretty small, about 4 feet 7 inches tall. They didn't climb trees anymore and mostly walked on the ground. Their skull shape already resembled ours, unlike the more pear-shaped heads of Australopiths. That's because they had larger brains. After them, we had Homo erectus, the upright man. They lived about 2 million to 70,000 years ago. The name hints that this was the first hominin species that walked on two legs almost all the time. They were also the first to migrate out of Africa, spreading to Asia and Europe. And here, we had the real breakthrough. Representatives of Homo erectus had even larger brains and learned to make more creative and advanced tools. They created the first choppers, cleavers, and hammers, and used flakes as scrapers and knives. They probably used a lot of things, wood, bark, and even grass to make the first strings and ropes. With all that, they learned how to hunt large animals and probably hunted together a lot. They were also the first ones to start using fire, which changed our history forever. Over time, more Homo species emerged, including the famous Neanderthals. They're known for their European roots. They split from our common ancestor around 400,000 years ago. Now, even though we share one common ancestor, we didn't evolve from Neanderthals. They were a separate branch. All Neanderthals went extinct, but our evolutionary branch coexisted with them a long time ago. Neanderthals were resourceful, hunting both land and sea creatures. They left behind thousands of stone tools and even decorated caves with paintings. They had their own ceremonies, too. They started to bury those who passed away. They probably noticed that leaving them in the wild leads to spreading diseases and attracting scavengers. But they also showed care and love in their burial rituals. Then it was time for archaic Homo sapiens. They lived around 500,000 to 200,000 years ago, emerging in Africa and Europe. This was the last leg between our ancestors and our modern species, Homo sapiens. The brain just kept getting bigger. They started to show more complex behaviors, not only burial and interesting stone tools, but also smart hunting strategies and planning for the future. They probably had a diverse diet that included both hunting and gathering. And finally, we reached the anatomically modern Homo sapiens. They emerged around 200,000 years ago in Africa. They had a similar skeletal structure and brain size to modern humans, and their behavior was pretty close to ours. They had complex social structures, started thinking in symbols, and so on. They migrated out of Africa around 60,000 years ago, spreading across the globe and eventually replacing other hominin species, such as Neanderthals. They started to create their first languages and form their first words. The first words were probably very simple, like ah to call someone and ma for babies. After evolving into our final stage, we started advancing in our cultural and technological development. This development became very rapid over the last 200,000 years. About 12,000 years ago, the Neolithic period, also known as the New Stone Age, began. It marked the end of the glacial period. Humans started living in settled villages instead of constantly moving around. This change was brought about by the advent of agriculture, which allowed people to grow crops and raise animals like goats and sheep. Early humans started to domesticate animals, such as sheepdogs, for herding. We also started making the first art, leaving famous drawings in caves, handprints, animals, mostly cows, hunting, and many others. We even created the first currency. We began using clay tokens for transactions. This marked the beginning of commerce and the use of money. And finally, we started writing. And now the events could be recorded and passed down through written records. This is when history officially began. From that point on, we saw the development of agriculture, the rise of complex societies, the invention of writing and the wheel, and the emergence of civilizations. Our tools became more and more sophisticated, languages appeared, leading to the diverse cultures and societies seen today. So, why have we stopped evolving? The truth is, we haven't. Human evolution is an ongoing process, although it's not as dramatic as it used to be. We adapt to different environments, have different skin tones, appearances, body sizes, and genetic mutations that have influenced traits like lactose intolerance or resistance to certain diseases. But the world we live in today is very different from the one our ancestors inhabited. We don't suffer as much because we've developed technology, culture, and social systems. Thanks to this, evolution slowed down, seeing that we're doing okay as we are now. What we started experiencing is cultural evolution rather than a physical one. Plus, 200,000 years is a pretty short time period, considering the time span of the universe or even of our Earth. We should see what happens to us in hundreds of thousands of years. I won't be around then, but there are some theories about that. There's a big idea that, in the future, humans and machines might merge into one super being. We call it technological singularity, a state where we humans lead our technologies to the point where we won't be able to control their development anymore. For example, if AI gets so advanced, it will change everything about how we live. Despite the current rise of AI, we shouldn't be too worried about it taking over the world, at least not in the next few decades. All we've developed now is weak artificial intelligence, little simulations. They might look scary to those who don't know much about AI, but the truth is, they have yet far to go before they reach the grand complexity of the human brain, not to mention consciousness. However, many people believe it's only a matter of time before AI reaches this level of intelligence, and then our world might change forever. There are other possibilities too. For example, one day we might reach a level where we merge with machines and learn to upload our consciousness in the cloud. In that case, we might become a hive mind, taking over the internet using our brains, becoming one giant consciousness. No matter what happens in the future, one thing's certain: technology is changing fast, and it's going to affect all of us sooner or later.
There's this interesting ancient site near St. Louis, Missouri, that a lot of people don't know about. It's called Cahokia, and it used to be a huge city with up to 20,000 people living there back in the 11th century. It's full of these massive earthen mounds that were built by hand, and the biggest one is still there today, at the Cahokia Mound State Historic Site. Even though we don't know everything about this civilization, researchers have been able to piece together some information from the remains they've found. For starters, they found some pretty old teeth at this site. After studying their appearance and structure, scientists suggest that a lot of different indigenous groups lived there. About a third of them came from other areas in the middle of the continent, which they figured out by studying the different levels of various substances in the teeth. And get this, the way the mounds are arranged shows that this was actually a planned-out city, not just a bunch of villages grouped together. The rulers lived on top of the mounds, while everyone else lived in other structures. It's amazing to think that they were doing things like farming, hunting, logging, pottery, and weaving, all within this one giant city. Right in the middle of Cahokia, there was this giant mound that was about 100 feet tall, and around it, there was this huge wooden fence. Inside the fence was the city center, which had a big open space called a plaza. Archaeologists think that the plaza was designed to represent the 4 cardinal directions of the world. It was like the people who built it wanted to create a place that was in harmony with the universe. The center of the city was where they held ceremonies and events, and it was such a big deal that people from outside Cahokia would come to be a part of them too. What became of this city? Hard to tell. Some people think that the reason it fell apart is that they cut down too many trees and the land got all messed up. Other scientists believe that's not true, because the soil was still in pretty good shape after the city was gone. The Europeans were not even around at that time, so they couldn't have influenced the downfall of Cahokia either. There's also one theory that suggests there were fights with other communities that caused the city to collapse. These days, there are over 65 preserved mounds, and you can even climb the steps of the tallest one. The best part is that local authorities are thinking of making it a national park, so you should totally plan to visit before it gets too crowded. Mohenjo-Daro is another lost ancient city that's still surrounded by mystery. Located in modern-day Pakistan, it was a city that flourished during the Bronze Age, and it was extremely advanced for its time. It had things like water systems and fancy architecture that other cities didn't have back then. Despite these features, it's not as well known as other ancient cities, like those in Egypt or Mesopotamia. What's even weirder is that at some point, the city was abandoned, and no one knows why. Archaeologists found the city in 1911, but it took a while for them to realize how important it was. Eventually, they uncovered a lot of really interesting things about the city, like its advanced sanitation system. Excavations uncovered over 700 wells, as well as private baths and a large communal bath. Remarkably, even private homes had toilets, and waste was efficiently disposed of through a citywide sewage system. They also had a lot of trade connections and made some really beautiful objects, like pottery, jewelry, and figurines that were sold all over the region. Despite its amazing culture and knowledge, scientists have yet to figure out why the city was abandoned. Some people think changes in the nearby river might have had something to do with it. The writings that the people of Mohenjo-Daro left behind are still a complex code, even for the most skilled specialists, making it even harder to piece together their history. Have you heard of the lost city of Kolmanskop? It used to be a small settlement in the Namib Desert. Legend has it that it got its name from a man named Coleman who got stuck in the local dunes and was never seen again. But that's not the interesting part. In 1908, a railway worker found a shiny stone and showed it to the chief railway foreman, who turned out to be a hobby mineralogist. They discovered it was a diamond, and soon, Kolmanskop became the richest town in Africa and one of the richest places in the world. It had luxurious stone houses, a school, a hospital, and even an ice factory to produce ice for fridges. The hospital had the first X-ray machine in southern Africa, which was supposedly used to check if workers were illegally swallowing diamonds. Its popularity began to decline in the late 1920s when another diamond-rich location was discovered nearby. Most of the inhabitants soon began to flee the city in search of a better life, leaving the buildings abandoned. In 1938, all machinery was taken south and the town was left to the desert. The last inhabitant left Kolmanskop between 1956 and 1960. The hot climate and low humidity have preserved the structures over time, and tourists can now visit this desert ghost town. You've surely heard about this next ancient city, Machu Picchu. It's this incredible ancient location in Peru. It stretches across a huge piece of land in the Andes Mountains and sits high above sea level. It's even considered one of the wonders of the modern world. But here's the thing. Scientists aren't exactly sure what it was used for. It could have supported up to 750 people, but there aren't a lot of human clues left behind. Some people think it was more of a spiritual or ceremonial place, while others believe it may have been like a fancy spa retreat for the nobles. The extensive terraces might mean it was used for crop testing or as a trading hub. And there's even a theory that it was used as a prison because they found a cell-like area too. It's amazing that even today, archaeologists and historians are still puzzled about how it was built. Did you know that they probably didn't even use wheels for transportation? And those massive granite rocks were somehow pushed up the steep Andean mountains, even though most of them weighed a lot. Some historians think that hundreds of people worked together to push each rock up the peak. The huge stones at Machu Picchu are also so close together that you can't see any cracks between them. It's pretty cool because it also makes the area safe during earthquakes, which is important since Peru is a shaky country. But how did the stones stay put during all those quakes? They actually move a little bit, but then they go back to their original spot, almost like they're dancing. Some people think wet wooden wedges were used to keep them in place, but that doesn't really add up, considering how big the structures are. Locals back then also seem to have built Machu Picchu without using any pack animals or iron tools. They had to sculpt and put everything together using mostly their hands. Plus, the citadel is built on a fault, so they had to move a bunch of stone and earth to make it flat. Scientists also think that the real construction is actually underground because of the deep foundations and drainage system. In fact, there's a hidden water system that was just recently discovered using 3D scanning. They didn't even use mortar to put the granite blocks together. They were so precise that you can't even fit a sheet of paper between them. One theory suggests that people that lived there used stone tools made of a harder material than the stone they were cutting.